It was just the most massive thing I've ever seen. To tell you the honest truth, I thought, well, we're the only ones left on this planet. Something's happened. We've missed something here.
The fear that went in me when I seen it was just, like the feeling, I'd say it was fear, but I've never felt that feeling before in my entire life.
It's a weird feeling, like you can't explain it when you don't know. You feel like you're being followed, but you don't know what it is.
We had two to our right, another one in front of us, another one to the left, and another one just across the road, shaking the daylights out of the tree. All we get was a big red eye.
I remember waking up and looking at the end of the bed, and there was a figure there, almost insect-like, and then I blacked out.
Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Cade Moyer, and you are listening to the Believe Paranormal and UFO podcast. If you have had an encounter and would like to share it, please get in touch with me. My email address is believepod@gmail.com. If you enjoy the podcast, be sure to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen, and head on over to our website, believepod.com, and consider becoming a member to get bonus episodes and video content. Tonight I'm joined by Mark, and Mark had some very unusual activity happen to him when he was 12 years old that kind of led him down a path of paranormal experiences. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, Cade. Nice to be on.
Mate, it's good to have you on. We were saying a little bit earlier before we hit record, it's been a mammoth effort to get this one lined up, but we got there in the end. So
yeah,
mate,
we did. Yeah, there's a few stops and starts, but yeah.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes, and I'm always excited, mate. So I'm excited because these types of when the universe gets in the way of an episode like this, it usually means it's a pretty good one. So, mate, no pressure, but tell me.
But hopefully I can live up to the expectations.
The weight of the universe is on your shoulders, mate. So take me back to where this all happened, because this actually happened essentially, when I say down the road, it's a little bit of a drive down the road from me, but it happened in Townsville. So,
yes,
mate, run me through this.
Well, I had moved from Sydney when I was about 8 up into Townsville, and I believe you're in Cairns. So, back then Townsville, there wasn't much about, we lived in Kerwin at the time, which was one of the last suburbs, at that time. It's not anymore, I don't think, and I used to go to Kerwin Primary, which was like this, the primary school there. And this is like, I'm 53 now, so this was like about 78 or something like that, and it was a couple of Ks kind of past the Kerwin suburbs. So it was actually basically in the middle of bushland. And, you to walk, or, if you rode your bicycle home, there was areas where it was just all bushland until you got to like the shopping centre, so, and just this one particular day, I'm just this kid, and we'd just, we'd finished, I think it was like something like a after school rugby practice or something, and I'm walking home with this friend of mine. I always remember his name, Trevor O'Neill, his name was, and he's walking, and I'm like wheeling my bike, and it's that afternoon at school, they'd been talking about stranger danger, which was a big thing back then, and we're actually talking about it. And this is the weird thing as well, like this, it's just strange. We're actually talking about this stranger danger right at that moment. We're kind of walking along, it's all bushland, we're like still a couple of Ks from sort of civilization, so to speak, and just out of nowhere, didn't hear it arrive, was my memory of it was that it was this white van, and it just was suddenly on us. And after that, it gets very hazy, like, I remember just being completely and absolutely in complete terror, and my memory of this is that I kind of found myself say, it was kind of getting towards sunset, and this, that was, at the time I didn't, I'm only young, so I didn't really think of it, Trevor's nowhere to be seen, and I'm sort of down the street a bit further, and at that time, I remember, I waited for Trevor, and he came out of the bushes, and he was kind of smiling, and it was weird, even though it was supposed to be this, it was this really terrifying experience of a stranger abducting us, or that's what we thought, and the fact that at the time, that it was, they were talking, we were talking about stranger danger, and then suddenly it kind of happens to us, if you know what I mean, which was bizarre, but we didn't think of that because at the time, and then after that, literally days later, my memories, there was some UFO book turned up at the school, and I just was, from then on, I just was absolutely couldn't get enough of it, sort of, so to speak, and it wasn't actually until years later that it kind of came out, but that's kind of another story. I don't know if you want to hear that now, but,
mate, absolutely.
With this encounter at 12, so what ended up happening is years later, I started to started to feel watched and all this, and this is connected with this house that I moved into and that. But I did actually end up going to, I don't know if you ever heard of her, but her name's Mary Rodwell.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mary, so I went up to, Mary lives she lives just kind of, it's near the town of Agnes Waters, right? So she lives in Queensland, and she's one of the world's most, leading UFO abduction researchers,
especially when it comes to regression therapy.
Yes, exactly. And that was that first thing that had bothered me when I was a kid, under. And one of the first things she was saying to me, she said, you are aware that one of the so-called screen memories with the whole UFO abduction thing is a white van, and I wasn't aware of that actually at all. And I was like, and I said, what? And she said, well, that's what people, it's just the whole encounter is just so terrifying that, for humans to kind of handle it, we're given kind of screen memories and that. I'm sure you might have heard of that before. So under hypnosis, and I've actually got the recording of it, that it turned out that, it wasn't a white van, because it was strange at the time. I do remember, when I was doing the regression with her, I'm saying to her, she said, well, did you hear it arrive? And I went, no, it was just suddenly there. And she was saying, the whole thing about us, talking about stranger danger, and then suddenly it's this kind of what they call synchronicity that happens in these kind of, this phenomenon, which is, and it's a bizarre phenomenon, there's so many facets to it. And so it ended up, it wasn't a van at all. And when I was under the regression, I was, before I'd actually moved to Townsville even, I used to have these recurring dreams, and I even had a name for these people, and these people used to come and get me, and I used to call them the busybodies. And the reason I call them the busybodies, it sounds crazy, but I call them the busybodies because they were just always up in my business, even as a kid, it's weird. I even had a name for them, and sure enough, under the hypnosis of that, I'm it's this kind of, it's hard to describe. It's like the realization, it's like something from some movie or something, the reality that kind of hit me. It was kind of the facade of our reality just kind of just everything kind of just went wow, 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 like, and it was just, and suddenly it was like I was what I actually happened, you know, and it wasn't a white van, it was like an actual craft, and it was these beings, but I couldn't see them, there was like a I don't know if it's maybe the way, whatever, you know, they don't let you see them if they can, because you just can't handle it, you know. And I'm talking about basically the greys or whatever, you know, like, so it ended up being, that encounter ended up being grey aliens. And I remember, I started to remember, and I saw them standing there, and it wasn't a white van, it was just this craft, you know. And then the only way I can describe it, it's like in my mind's eye, it was like this door just slammed shut, like just, and it's hard to describe it. Even I can visualize it. Just, it's like in my mind's eye, this door just shook. It just was banged shut, and it was like, you are not going any further, sort of thing. You are not remembering anymore. Like, and no matter what, like Mary tried, I couldn't get past this sort of hypnotic wall or something, maybe, that, you know, like these beings or whatever they are can put to you know, can put in the minds of a human, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a like a firewall or something like that.
Yeah,
just
basically,
within your
that's
mind.
what it was just really bizarre. And then, you know, like, I mean, when I lived back in Townsville a few times, I'd go back and visit my parents, and I remember one time, like, I would have been about 23, and I'm still doing it. I just voraciously read, you know, about UFO stuff, and, you know, the whole paranormal thing, you know, like, I mean, you know, the whole thing with the UFO phenomenon, you've got to be careful, because you can go down rabbit holes, you know, like, and there's, you know, there can be people out there that are, you know, you can make money and that, but there is, you know, it is a real phenomenon, like, and I mean, people are starting to see, it's all sort of coming out now, you know. But yeah, when I was in my early 20s, and I just like woke up one morning, and it was about 2 a.m, and the house was all dark, and I just woke up, and I walked out into my parents' dining room, and standing there in front of me is this spindly figure, you know, like the classic sort of really, you know, long, skinny limbs, really long fingers, like, and I remember I'm trying to look at its face, and it was the same thing, like, it was weird. You could see its body, but its face was kind of like, you couldn't see it. It was like it had like maybe like in shadow or something, you know, like, and Mary had since told me that's, yeah, completely deliberate. And then this being, like, kind of like just walked straight up, and it's making this really weird kind of throaty sort of noise, and it just kind of grabs me by kind of my upper forearms and just puts me up against the wall, like, and I'm completely paralyzed. I can't move, and it's holding me, but didn't feel like it was holding me tight, but I still can't move. And then it's literally, it just starts like pressing its hands on my face, and like, you know, like just kind of touching me on my face, and that was kind of bizarre and terrible. It was weird, like, it was scary, but there was also this calmness that had come over me, you know. And then the next thing, I found myself back in bed, you know, and so, you know, with stuff like that happens, you kind of think, was it a dream? Even though it felt very real, you know, like at the time, you're just like, oh, you know, maybe, you know, I mean, it's so far out of our humans' understanding of our reality around us that it's just, it can be hard to accept, and does that make sense?
The thing is, when it comes to this kind of phenomenon, there is just, like you said, there is absolutely so many rabbit holes that you can go down. And, I've even heard stories of beings taking human consciousness away and, putting them on I think slave planets. I think this was actually an episode of the Confessionals podcast where someone said that they had their consciousness taken from them when they were a child for 20 years and they came back into their own body. 20 years had passed for that consciousness, but not for them.
Yeah, I've heard stuff like that. The thing is with this phenomenon, there's such a high strangeness to it. And it's just, once you find out that they can pretty much do anything they want, really. Like, the technology is so far in advance of what we have that it's indistinguishable from magic.
I would 100% believe that. And, that's really just how technology has worked throughout the entire human race is that, if we took something that we have right now and something, simply so basic of, let's say one of our phones, and showed that to someone from the medieval times that we could take a picture, it has a torch on it, it does all these amazing things, they would think that would be, witchcraft or something like that. Oh,
totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So, like, this kind of, there's these kind of things happen. So that happened in my mid-20s, but life goes on and, I always had an interest in it.
Well, mate, before we continue on with the other stuff that happens in your life, I have to ask about your friend Trevor, because he seemed to be there throughout this entire experience. What was, like, did you ever talk to him about this? And now, a quick word from our sponsor. Also, are you wanting more content? Why not become a Believe Plus member? You'll get access to exclusive podcasts and episodes that aren't available to the public. Not only that, you'll also get our regular feed without any ads. Head to believepod.com/plus to sign up today for just $5 a month.
I never did. That's the weird thing. And it's like, and when I was talking to Mary about this, she's just going, yep. And I remember one of the first things she said to me was like, when this van that came up, which direction did it come from? And I just said, it came up behind us. And, later on she said, that's a common thing. There's some little, like when with these researchers, there's little things they hold back, that are kind of like common things that people describe that happen to them that, and if they say that, they go, oh, okay, that fits in with our data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's a common thread throughout it all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But with Trevor, no, I can remember Mary saying, so you were waiting for him? And I said, yeah, I was waiting for him. And he came out at the bushes. And she said, oh, well, he must have, well, what was he like? And I said, oh, he was like actually smiling and that. And she said to me, do you think that's strange, Mark, that he was smiling and he wasn't upset? And, because for all intents and purposes, you could have been abducted by some, stranger, and yeah, that did strike me, but when you're that age, you don't really realize,
Oh, absolutely. And, this is the late 70s. This isn't a thing that people talk about.
Yeah. And as I said, back then, like the outskirts of Townsville, there really wasn't that much about, and, there's things, as I said, throughout my life that I can just, when you were talking about that, I can remember not long after that, and it only seemed like a couple of weeks later, I had this, I was my memory was I was riding a bike around the shopping centre, which was sort of close. The bushland was right there. And I was with another friend, and I can remember his name as well, Robbie Taylor. And this man came up to us, and I can remember him asking, and I remember he had blue coveralls on. That's my, and he was saying something about, oh, do you want, I've got some lollies or something. So, and, you're thinking, oh, it's like, some sort of predator, that kind of thing, But my memory of it, it was really dreamlike sort of thing. And but my main memory of this man, in inverted commas, was that it was his eyes. Like, I just could never forget about his eyes. And, once again, that's the last thing I remember, but I've never, I want to go back to Mary again one day, but the fear involved in it is so intense.
You're reliving every situation that is, your mind has either hidden it from you because it's so traumatic, or, whatever these things are have decided, hey, this is probably a little too much.
Yeah, either they have done it deliberately, or your mind is protecting itself because, it's just so far out of our understanding.
Yeah, no, absolutely, definitely.
But no, Trevor, no, I just remember we just didn't even seem very bothered after it, and I never spoke to him about it. And this is another weird thing that I have actually read in when other people that have had this, this occur to them. We were really good friends. After that, we just never saw each other again. You never really spoke to each other, and it was just, it was weird, and I never knew what happened to him, even though I'd love to. I mean, I even, a couple of years ago, tried to look up his name on Facebook and see, and if I could have found him, I was going to ask him. But don't know what happened to him.
You'll be surprised at how often that type of scenario comes up when people have had experiences like this. And, it's not just really related to just UFOs, but, the paranormal, yowies, just things that are quite unexplainable.
Yeah.
They almost seem to fracture these people's lives so much that they are just unable to connect with the person that they were with in that moment, because that person would always be that anchor to what happened there. Yeah exactly. It's very strange, and then I can, as I'm talking to you, and I can remember another, I can remember another strange thing where I was with one of my best friend that I still know him today. He lives in Taiwan nowadays. But we were sitting on a back wall, and the wall was a fence between my parents' house and the neighbours, and it was kind of a large brick wall, and it was probably about 6 feet high. But to kids, that's really high, so we used to climb up and sit on it. And I can remember being younger and I was sitting there and a UFO hovering above us. And that was my memory. And once again, it's kind of hazy. And I asked John about it a couple of years ago, and I said, did that happen? Am I making that up? And he said, no, that happened. And he said, but his memory of it was that it was like these weird lights in the sky, but my memory of it was that it was way closer, and it was actually a craft, like typical sort of flying saucer, It's surreal, because it sounds like they are, whatever they may be, it's almost like they're coming back to you throughout your life and just keeping tabs on you.
Yeah, well, it's, it seems to be a common thing, but I mean, I never, even though I had this interest in it, I would, I just never kind of went there really, apart from just reading about it and thinking these are odd things that happened to me, but I never looked on myself as being someone that was possibly an abductee or what have you, like until, about 5 or 6 years ago.
I have to ask you, earlier you spoke about a person in blue overalls, and
Yes.
it sounded like you were hinting that there was even missing time associated with that.
Yes. Well, obviously I read, reading later that was a common thing that people said as well, that these beings, like they were kind of in some sort of one-piece blue coveralls or something, so yeah, that was another one where there was possible missing time as well, but it was even more dreamlike, so I think they kind of bank on that it's, it's even could be the maybe the like what you were saying earlier, that they can take you to, they can do whatever they like. They can take your consciousness, they can take you physically, and so it just can become very dreamlike,
It would be hard to separate what's real and what's not, and that would be incredibly frustrating for someone like yourself who, is unsure of, like, did this happen? Did this not happen?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Whereas, you do read of other accounts where people have, can remember consciously, I could never remember consciously until, later, but I think, it was really after seeing Mary, and I think, as we've said, there's a big reason for it, because it can be just so terrifying. And if you can get through the fear, it's amazing. But you've got to get through that fear, and that's easier said than done.
Have you had many other encounters with, I guess, this UFO phenomenon? Because it kind of sounds like you have quite a few different touch points, and it's even to the point where you're having these encounters with other people around. Like, how does it affect them?
I think people, I didn't really talk about it with people, I have friends and that knew I had an interest in that, and I think it's only in the last couple of years or 5 or 6 years that, just because of the stigma involved is starting to kind of, evaporate, and I've always found it strange that, for instance, that you had people that go, oh yeah, I believe that there's UFOs, in quotation marks, as in they're flying around or whatever, but you'd get people that could believe in that, but they couldn't believe that there was the abduction thing or something. There's obviously a reason they're here, and they're not just flying around in the sky or under the oceans. They're interacting with us. That's
a really good point of view that you kind of put there, is the fact that, you did have this encounter way back in the late 70s there, where it would have felt so, and I don't mean to make a pun here, but so alienated with this type of experience. Like, you couldn't have really spoken about it to anyone.
No, especially not back then. But it even, it took a long time. I always could speak about it to close friends and that, but, it wasn't until I did the kind of regression that I really realized that something had happened, and then about 6 years ago, kind of, everything kind of exploded for about 6 months or so.
So what was the catalyst for you to decide to go get regression therapy? Like, was it just something that was eating you up inside, and you just...
It was because I'd moved into this house at Tweed Heads, with my ex-partner Caroline, who tragically she passed away, and that, it was after I'd moved in with her to this house, and things began to start to happen where you just couldn't ignore it, and that was when I actually, after a couple of months, went, right, I've got to I've got to find out what the hell's going on. And that's when I went and saw Mary.
So you think the things that were going on in your house were connected to the previous UFO contacts that you've had?
Yeah.
So what was going on in the house?
Well, we just like we'd moved into this place at Tweed Heads, and it's interesting. The guy it was the guy that used to live there was a grandfather that had passed away, and he was a really, really interesting dude. That he had like books on, remote viewing and that, which I found really, really interesting. But it was the classic thing. Like we just first moved in, and there wasn't. The first thing that sort of happened, was the TV started to turn on by itself. At odd times. But you're thinking at the time, it just kind of started a little gradually. You're thinking at the time, that someone's got the same sort of remote or something, But that didn't really make sense because the houses were a long way apart, and so the TV would turn on by itself. The stereo, like I can remember, like in the early days, we're lying in bed at night, and it was pretty scary. Like we'd wake up and I'd be looking at Caroline and be like, "Can you hear that?" And we'd come out and the stereo is on. And, of course we hadn't left it on, and just kind of things like that technological sort of issues, like we'd hear like strange beeping noises that we couldn't figure out where they came from. And we'd think, it's got to be the microwave. So we'd go over the microwave and no, it's not the microwave. The microwave's not even on. And it's got to be the fridge. And, and then it just kind of started to amp up. I was trying to think of the timeline of it because there's just kind of so much happened. But basically, like things like I can remember it got so commonplace, this kind of paranormal type of stuff that you kind of became used to it. But it was also that had that, like I'm sure you've heard people talk about that Skinwalker Ranch thing and all the kind of trickster element. Like you'd get up in the morning, you'd go to say butter your toast, and you'd put your knife down for 1 second, and you'd go to get it again, and it's gone. And you're like, no, and it just happened all the time, and then you'd be looking around for it everywhere, and then you'd walk back, and there it is. I always remember one of the first early things that is I'd bought a Mac laptop, and I had a mouse that was paired with the Apple laptop, and I'd bought it that day. So I was in bed and like I just playing with the first day, and I just put it down beside me with the mouse, and then woke up in the morning and the mouse was just nowhere to be seen, and we never found it again. I mean, just you're tearing the place apart because you're thinking, like I must have got up during the night or something. It's only small, but the thing, because it was paired with the Mac, it was telling us it was in the room, but it wasn't. Like, so it was just like it was like really it just kind of got more and more feeling of it, like nighttime started to come, and as the night time I started to get this really sense of foreboding, like a really it's the only way I can describe it, a sense of foreboding, almost like a dread, like, and Caroline was there, and like she could see what was happening, and then just during the night, I can remember you know, we had this what do you call it, an iPad, and unfortunately I don't have it anymore because we filmed all these orbs on it, like, you know, and there's one footage of me like where I'm kind of like Caroline was filming in that because we played music and that, and we would like record ourselves, say, hey, we've got a new song, so she'd film it, you know, and I'd be strumming the guitar, and there's one where I'm like kind of like flicking away at my face, and then when we played it back, it was, you could see these like little, what I suppose what they call orbs, like dancing in front of my face, and I couldn't see them with the naked eye, but on the footage you could see that I'm actually like, looks like I'm, you know, I'm obviously bothered by them, like, but I just didn't even know they were there, you know. So and it just got, so, you know, another example is I remember we went downstairs and we were doing some gardening, and I went to put on some dinner and that, and I had to get like some chicken, and I put it in the microwave, and then I came downstairs and just let it defrost for the afternoon, and then I'd forgotten something. I came straight back up, and this chicken is just sitting smack bang in the middle of the hallway, like just literally like a minute after, like just sitting there, and, you know, you're stunned, you know, like, and, you know, like Caroline, we had cats, so you're thinking, is it cats? Did the cats somehow get in the microwave? And there's absolutely no way they could have done that, and it wasn't destroyed anyway. It was just sitting there still in its plastic, and there's no way they could have got into the microwave anyway. Like it was, you know, impossible for a cat to press it. But you are trying to think of rational things, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know,
like you'd try to justify everything that's kind of going on inside that house.
Yeah, and it got so crazy. Like and this is kind of just before I went and saw Mary. This table disappeared. We had like a kind of like, you know, like a side table. I'm not talking like a kitchen table, but it was a fairly big table. Like, you know, like it wasn't like a little foot table. It was big enough, and it just disappeared. Like, we just came out and it was gone, and we searched for it for days and we couldn't find it. We were going, this is insane. Like, how can a table go? And then just about 2 weeks later, we came downstairs, and here's the table sitting on top of the kitchen sink, just sitting there. I mean, there's no way it could have been there before. You never would have missed it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. That's too much. Like, that would push you over the edge.
Yeah, totally. It was, yeah. And on top of that, there was, you know, just this kind of incredible fear, and yeah, there's a lot that happened. You know, it's very kind of hard to, you know, like, there's so many little things, you know, but there was one night where, as this started to happen, that I kind of had fallen asleep, and Caroline was lying in bed, and I sat bolt upright, and as I sat bolt upright, this lights, like, and Caroline reckoned it was some sort of craft went by the window. So there was all these kind of like things like that had happened, and I was so scared. I was literally in this fetal position some nights, like, you know, and I can remember, you know, Caroline, I couldn't let her, if she left the room, she'd have to tell me when she was coming back in, because I felt like I could get taken by something or someone at any moment, at any time. It didn't matter, you know, like.
That's a terrible way to live, isn't it?
Yeah, I was a mess, like, you know. Yeah, I was a mess, and
Did you feel like you were going crazy? Losing your mind?
Totally, yeah. I thought I was. Well, that's the thing. I thought I'm having some sort of schizophrenic breakdown or some sort of, you know. And Caroline was like, "No, you're not. I've seen it." You know, like, I mean, it just.
That's the silver lining of it all, isn't it? That you were able to have someone there with it.
Because if she wasn't, like, yeah, I don't know what would have happened. There's like one morning we woke up and it involved the whole kind of like almost like the Skinwalker Ranch thing. Like there was this diary that Caroline had, and it was just laying open like for us to basically see, and there was all this weird writing in it, and it looked like some sort of it was just weird, as though someone you hear in the paranormal field like automatic writing. It looked like that, and Caroline got really upset about that, and I said, "Did you do this?" And it was just weird symbols, and we couldn't figure out how the hell, like, because it wasn't a diary actually. It was a lyric book that we had for the band and that, and then all this stuff was scribbled over the top of it that we just didn't know. It just wasn't there the day before, and then overnight it was there. And Caroline got so freaked out about that, she threw it away, and she just, like, she couldn't look at it. I wanted to try, but it was weird symbols, and yeah, it was pretty intense. And then down there's the Tweed Heads RSL, which is like a really, pretty staple sort of place between Coolangatta and Tweed Heads. And Caroline's husband came up, and I'm thinking, God, he must think I'm crazy. And anyway, that was Caroline's ex-husband, but they were still on great terms. So me and Caroline and Renee went down to the RSL to have dinner. And this is when it just floored me. Like, I just kind of walked in to the pub, and there's this woman behind the bar, and I went to ask for a drink. And this is no word of a lie. Before I could even ask anything, she just looks at me, points at me, and she says, "You're in contact with aliens."
Oh, stop it. Really?
No, that's completely true. Like,
that would have spun you out. Like, just
yeah, totally.
To
and
the
Renee
nth
was
degree.
right there. Oh yeah, I took steps back, like, as in, I was like pretty shocked, because there was all this strange stuff happening, and I was trying to kind of make sense of it. And then this woman who I'd never met before, working behind the bar, mind you, like, says this to me. And then she says, "I need to talk to him," because I went running off and went, "Oh, this is just, I can't handle this." Like, and yeah, and then she came over and spoke to me and said it's okay and they won't hurt you, and and she ended up ringing me, and yeah, it was her she was strange as well, because she rang me and she kind of did something to me to kind of like alleviate my fear, but I never saw her at the pub again. Like, it was like I just wondered who the hell she was, if she was kind of like, you get these thoughts, you're like, did the other bar members even see her? Like, was she just kind of there to, what we talked about, that kind of high strangeness?
Yeah, absolutely. And my thoughts exactly when it comes to that. But yeah, holy Mark, you have got quite an interesting life going on, and I can imagine, like, this would genuinely really be the tip of the iceberg that you've shared with us tonight.
Yeah, well, there's more. It's just, the thing is that, like, I haven't, for me, there's still a lot of stuff that I don't remember, like what, and I want to go and see Mary again, but I'm kind of, to be honest, I'm scared, like, just because it is terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It would be. And the thing is, you're opening old wounds by doing that. And I always have this kind of a thought process when it comes to the paranormal, is that, things kind of get blocked off for a reason. And when you go opening those doors again, doors work both ways. You go in and you go out of them.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm always very cautious when people say they want to do things, because I always say, doors are entries and exits, so just be mindful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's more that happened. But, how much time we got?
Well, mate, I think we should probably tee up another time to get you on, because
Okay.
I knew before we kind of started this might happen. But Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to share those encounters with me. They are, they're very profound and very personal. So, I do appreciate you taking the time to share those, because they are incredible.
It's hard to. I mean, I still find it hard to believe, but I mean, I accept it more now. And everything's quiet at the moment, and has been for a couple of years. But I think that's what happens.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Believe Paranormal and UFO podcast. If you have had an encounter and you would like to share it, please get in touch with me. My email address is believepod@gmail.com. Finally, don't forget to follow us on all our social media outlets, and be sure to join our Discord server to talk to other listeners of the show. You'll find all these links in our show notes. Thank you.